Good afternoon. We will pay attention to the reconciliation of the debtors control with the debtors list when all the entries in the control account was provided. So if we look at this debtors control, there's a balance. A debtor is an asset. Assets increase on the debit side and decrease on the credit side, so the balance should be on the debit side. Then there's bank debtors column in the cash receipts journal. When an entry is recorded in the cash receipts journal, the bank will be debited. Therefore, this amount should be on the credit side of the debtors control because it was money paid by debtors and the debtors control balance should decrease. Cash sales is not supposed to be in the debtors control because bank will be debited and sales will be credited. So we must remove the cash sales from the debtors control. Bad debts will reduce my debtors, therefore the bad debt should be on the credit side. Sales returns will also reduce the debtors, therefore that should be on the credit side. In the debtors control on the credit side, we've got an entry posted from the cash payments journal. When an amount is recorded in the cash payments journal, the bank account is credited and the debtors account should be debited to show that the debtors must increase with this amount again. Credit sales will increase debtors, therefore that figure should be on the debit side. So the first thing that we will do is to look at our debtors control account and remove entries that's not supposed to be there and put the other entries on the correct side of the control account. Then if we look at the total of the list of debtors, we see it's 51,884, where we can also immediately see that there was a lot of mistakes made. On 30 June, we will start with the debtors list with 51,884, what was given to us, and we will go and change this debtors control and show the figures on the correct side of the debtors control. Therefore, we will show in the debtors control the balance that was given in the incorrect one, the figures that were supposed to be on the debit side, the sales that were supposed to be on the debit side, the payments that were supposed to be on the credit side, the bad debts and the debtors allowances that's supposed to be on the credit side. So all the entries that appeared in the debtors control that was on the incorrect side, we've put now on the correct side, highlighted in yellow. Then the total given to us in the debtors list is 51,884. The bookkeeper neglected to transfer a credit balance of 78 on the account of JRs in the debtors ledger to his account in the creditors ledger. We have to be very careful here how we transfer this balance so that we don't do the incorrect entry. If we've got a debtors ledger and we've got a creditors ledger, they say the balance is on the credit side. So the balance can be in the debtors ledger on the credit side or it can be in the creditors ledger on the credit side. The balance is on the credit side in the debtors ledger. So therefore this balance is on the credit side of the debtors ledger. If we want to transfer it, we will have to put it on the debit side of the debtors ledger and complete my double entry in the creditors ledger on the credit side. Because they said no entry was recorded, it means that we have to record it in both the creditors ledger and in the account in the debtors ledger. We will debit the debtors control. As I showed here, we have to debit the debtors control with a 78 to remove the credit balance by debiting the account. And we will also record that in the account of JRs on the debit side, the 78. interest of 30 Rand must still be charged on the overdue account of a debtor in Julie's. So this entry was not recorded at all. Therefore, we have to show that in the debtors control, we will increase the debtors control with 30 Rand. And we will also show it on the debit side of Julie's account to increase the debt with 30 Rand. The receipts from a debtor, 161,300, includes an amount of 75 Rand recovered from a debtor whose account was previously written off as bad debts. This error did not affect the debtor's ledger. This is very important. So they tell us that we didn't make a mistake in the debtor's ledger, so I mustn't go and correct anything in the debtor's list. But in the debtor's control, we made a mistake. Because if someone's account was written off once, you can never write in his account again because his account is now closed. If we receive money from that person after we've written off the bad debts, it means that the bank must be debited and bad debts recovered must be credited. Because this 161,300 includes the 75 Rand that was not supposed to be there, it means that we must remove it from the debtors control. So we will show that we have to subtract the 75 from the total amount that was received so that we can see what is the amount that was supposed to go in the debtors control on the credit side. An entry in respect of sales returns of 205 was recorded correctly in the debtors allowances journal. So if there was no mistake in the debtors allowances, there is no mistake in my debtors control. But it was posted to the debit side of the debtor in the debtors ledger. Now, if we issue a credit note or people return goods, it means that the debtors must decrease on the credit side. So I was supposed to put the 205 on the credit side. We've recorded the 205 on the debit side. So to correct this mistake, I must put it on the credit side so that it can cancel out the mistake that I made on the debit side. But that entry was also supposed to be recorded on the credit side. So as soon as we record something on the wrong side of the account, it means that we will have to correct it double the amount. First, to correct the mistake, and secondly, to record the original entry as it was supposed to be recorded. An invoice issued for 606 was correctly recorded in the subsidiary journal, but K. Lowe's account was debited with 660. So that means that there was no mistake in the journal, so there is no mistake in the debtors control. But in K. Lowe's account, we showed his account as 660. It was just supposed to be 606. So it means in his account on the debit side, we recorded too much. So we have to decrease his account with the 54 because we showed too much on the debit side. After I've done all these entries, I will now balance my debtors control account, adding the debit side, subtracting the credit side, and I determine that the balance in the debtors control is now 51528 after all the corrections were made. If I add up the debtors list on the debit side and on the credit side, and I take the debits minus the credits, I also get 51528. That indicates to me that we corrected all the mistakes that we knew about because both these totals are now the same. What did we learn today? If we made a mistake in the subsidiary journal, then it means that we have to go and correct it in the control account and in the list. Because if there's a mistake in the journal, the total of the column is incorrect, so the wrong total was transferred to the control account. Because there's a mistake in the journal, you also took the wrong figure to the account of the debtor. If the total in the debtors column in the journal is wrong, it means that there was no mistake in the journal, so there's no mistake in the debtors list. There's only a mistake in the control account because this wrong total was transferred to the debtors control account, and therefore it will only be corrected in the control account. If a mistake was made in the individual account of a debtor, it must only be corrected in the individual account and on the debtors list. When all the entries in the control account is provided, you must add or subtract the figures from the amounts that were given to determine what was the correct amount that should have been for the total sales, total debtors allowances, total payments, etc.